So what are custom shooting modes anyway, and why do we need to be using them? In today's video, we're going to find out. What's up everyone, Pete Coco here. I am a headshot and portrait photographer with a studio in New York. And in today's video, I want to talk to you about the custom shooting modes in your Canon EOS R5 and R6. Now, before we get started, please hit that like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, and definitely leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this video. And thank you to all of you who've been subscribing and commenting. I really appreciate it. Now, what are custom shooting modes? Well, in your camera, custom shooting modes will be designated by a C followed by a number. So on the Canon camera, if you have an R5 or an R6 and you hit the mode button, it'll pull up this menu. And this menu gives you all of your different shooting modes. You have here auto, flexible priority, program, shutter and aperture priority, manual. So all of the basic modes that we know about. But then you have C1, C2, and C3. So that's what we're going to talk about today. These C settings stand for custom settings. And basically, what the custom shooting menu allows you to do is to customize an entire profile for the camera that instantly is recalled when you select the C number that you've programmed. Now, it's easy to confuse this with other custom settings. So let me just explain and make a little bit of a delineation between the two. You have on your camera ways you can customize the menu. For example, you have My Menu where you can pull all the options you use a lot and dump it into a new menu tab. You have customizable buttons. You can tell the camera which buttons you want to do what, and there's quite a few buttons if you have an R5 or an R6 that you can program and have the camera control in whichever way you like. But that's not the same as the custom shooting modes that we're talking about today. So the custom shooting modes you can think about as more of a global setting that applies to the entire camera after you're done tweaking all these other settings. So for example, you can choose your autofocus method, you can choose your menu settings, you can choose your button configuration, you can choose even down to your aperture, your shutter speed, your ISO, your picture profile, whether you're shooting in RAW and JPEG. Every option of the camera will be recalled if you set it to one of the custom shooting modes. So the custom shooting mode, think of it as a way to instantly recall a snapshot of where you set the camera last. All right, so now that we know what the custom shooting modes are, let's talk about why you definitely should be using them. Now, when I got started, I never used them, and it took me quite a long time, probably longer than it should have, for me to just sit down and register these settings and just take the hour to figure it out and get it programmed in the camera and to just use the custom settings. So if you're not using it, I recommend you definitely set this up today, and you're going to save yourself a lot of time and mistakes in the future. And here's why. So let me just give you a real world experience from what I do. I have my custom shooting mode number 1 set up specifically for headshots at my studio. The most common thing I'm doing is headshots because I'm a headshot photographer. And what I did one day after figuring out the ideal settings to start with was I went through, I set up the camera exactly how I wanted it, and then I registered it in the custom shooting menu. So anytime I have a client come in for headshots, this makes my life a lot easier, and it also keeps me from making a foolish mistake. So here's why. First of all, I know with the lighting I use and the setup I use that using ISO 100 and 1/60th of a second and f4 set here is always where I want to start. The other thing it does is it makes sure that I'm shooting in RAW, which I want to do and have to do. It has the focus setting I like for my headshots, and it has my Kelvin where I like it, and my picture profile. Not only does this save me a ton of time that I'm not changing all these settings when a client comes or before a client comes, there's a much more important reason why you want to do this. And here's why. You will make foolish mistakes if you don't do this. So for instance, What happens if you say take the camera out and you're just doing some family photos and you don't want to deal with RAW files and you just throw the camera on JPEG? Well, if you forget to put the camera back into RAW and now you're shooting something more important or a client that's paying, you could really screw things up. And people have done this where you just shoot in JPEG the whole time and you don't even realize it. So that's one big reason. Also, it keeps things consistent. So when I'm doing my headshots, I want everything consistent, and then I can always tweak my settings from here depending on the person's clothing, depending on their skin tones. I'm just tweaking the settings instead of starting from scratch and trying to remember, oh, what did I use for this? What did I use for that? It's also going to make your entire workflow much quicker and easier, and it's going to help you to become much more consistent when you're shooting a specific circumstance. All right, so now that we know what these custom shooting modes are and why we should be using them, let's talk about why we have 3 of them. Well, it's very simple. You can set your camera for 3 specific situations. So for example, in my camera, as I already said, I have custom shooting menu 1 set for my headshot sessions. Now, when I'm using custom shooting mode number 2, I'm out doing street photography or family photography. So that's going to be a totally different setting. If you do sports, for instance, you can set one custom shooting mode for sports where you have a faster shutter speed, or maybe auto ISO, or maybe a specific type of profile you want to use for that kind of shooting. So being able to register settings for a specific kind of shooting situation makes the camera highly customizable for your specific kind of session or shoot. So that's the importance of this. It's going to greatly improve your workflow. It's going to make using the camera much easier, and it's going to save you a ton of time and headaches. Okay, so that's basically it. Now you know what the custom shooting modes are and why you should be using them. So take the time to go through your camera and make sure you have the custom shooting modes set, and that you set it up for your specific kind of usage. It's going to take a little bit of a time investment at first, but in the long run, you're going to save a ton of time. You're going to keep yourself from making silly mistakes, and you're going to make the camera more enjoyable to use because it's going to do exactly what you want it to do when you want it to do, instead of you constantly having to fish for settings and change menus. And as always, thank you for checking out this quick video. I hope that this was helpful to you. It helps you to use your camera in a much more streamlined way and that you get something out of it. Once again, leave me a comment, hit the like button, share it, and I'll see you all next time. Have fun with your cameras. Bye, everybody.